Do you guys remember when these movies were about cars and car racing, and the fact that the first one was just a remake of Point Break, but just with cars in this time? Yeah, that was a good times. Hello, brothers and sisters. My name is Daidarius, and welcome to the review for Hobbs and Shaw, or Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw. So, Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw is actually a Fast and Furious spin-off because we don't have enough Fast and Furious movies. Now we need spin-offs also. It stars Dwayne Johnson and Hobbs and Jason Statham as Shaws, as they are pulled in for an extremely dangerous job because Shaw's sister has infected herself with a highly deadly virus who apparently can infect 100% of all the population. And now they need to try and get her and get the virus out of her, and then, make sure that the bad guys don't get their hands on this virus that can infect 100% of the population. That is pretty much this movie's plot summed up. So, what did I like about this movie? Well, let me just get that out of the way right away. I'm not a fan of this movie, so it's a bit hard for me to find things that I liked about this movie. But one of the aspects I did like was whenever Hobbs and Shaw was bickering at each other, throwing insults and how they're gonna beat each other up and how they're gonna dismantle them and just kick them each other in the face. That was always fun to laugh. That is pretty much where this movie shines. And I have a vague idea that is why this movie exists, because in the former one, in Fast and Furious 8, that is what Hobbs and Shaw did to each other, and apparently people liked it so much, and especially Dwayne Johnson liked it so much that let's make a spin-off where they do that, just a movie where they do that thing. But unfortunately, they don't only do that thing, they don't only bicker to each other, which means that every time we divert from that aspect, we need to get back to a plot of some sort and action sequences and all that, and then the movie becomes dull. But whenever they bicker with each other, that actually is not comedy gold, but I did laugh out loud a few times. Every time you land on one of those scenes, you just feel the testosterone in the room just skyrocket. It is insane how much manly they can be. They're pretty much the modern days Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, even though Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone are still around, but they're not in the prime anymore, so this is them kind of taking their mantle. It was just fun to watch. Then there's some of the fight sequences is kind of entertaining. Now I'll get on to why they're not that much entertaining later on, but they were kind of entertaining. It was mostly fun just to see Jason Statham just kick ass, because he's not as big as The Rock, he's not just a hulking tank who just plow through anyone who's put in front of him. He's not unstoppable. He takes a few hits, he gets thrown a bit around, but he always gets back up. He's very aggressive, like just an angry pit bull terrier or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about dogs, but an angry, aggressive dog just, getting back up and getting right in your face. That is pretty much Jason Statham in this movie. So some of the action sequences with him was fun to watch. And some of the effects were decent. There's a lot of times where you can see there's a screen happening, and it's so badly done that even The Matrix Reloaded, who came out in 13 years ago? I think it was back in 2003. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was back in 2003, where Morpheus was fighting this agent on top of this truck. It was done much better back then than a lot of the scenes in this movie, which just baffles me. But I'm pretty sure the budget for this movie is pretty high. But nonetheless, some of the visual effects okay. Then the story in this movie. The story in this movie is not engaging at all. You don't give 3 flying fucks for this movie story. The plot just exists there for these 2 manly men to have something to do, and that is it. So the plot is not the most interesting. However, it does bring with it some funny scenarios and entertaining scenarios. For example, there's this one scene where they have to go through terminal in the airport to get onto the plane to fly to another country. The things that's happening in that scene I found very entertaining. And also the plot is easy to follow along. There's no twists and turns in here. It's just as simple as it can be. Now, as you might hear, I'm quite struggling right now to actually find some other good things to say about this movie. The action sequence for the most part was just dull and all that, so is there anything else that is great? The chemistry between some of the main characters was fine, I guess. I mean, there were cars in this movie, and there was even one very fast car. So we got that, checkbox of this is the Fast and Furious movie, needs an exotic hypercar in it somewhere. So they just ticked that off, put it in a few scenes in the movie, and then said, we're done, that was it. And then they just moved on. I mean, okay. I can't praise this movie anymore, so let's just go into the meat of this review, which will be everything I didn't like about this movie. Now, before I get into anything I didn't like about this movie, I'm just going to pretend that this movie doesn't relate to any of the other Fast and Furious movies. We're just going to put it, the fact that this is related to the Fast and Furious movies, over here. We're going to get back to it later on, but for the main time, we just let it stay here, because I don't want all my arguments come from the fact that this is related to the other Fast and Furious movies. So for the time being, let's just stay there. So first of all, the character development for the two main characters, Hobbs and Shaw, is very, very strange, because they start out as literally hating each other. They want to kill each other off. Well, at least they want to kill each other off in one scene, but never mind that. Then the relationship kind of stayed the same throughout the most part of the movie until one particular point of the movie, and then from there and on, they kind of become almost best friends, and it just doesn't feel like natural progression. And a lot of the aspect in this movie has the same issue. It doesn't feel like natural progression. For example, the bad guy in this movie, played by Idris Elba, is this. He called himself the Black Superman, and he's not wrong, because he's almost indestructible, and he's extreme. He's stronger than Hobbs in the movie, so he's really, really strong. But then later on in the movie, they just kind of beat his ass, and every punch they get is not as hurtful as you think it would be from a man who can throw cars, or at least he can throw bikes. It doesn't really add up here, so it's not consistent throughout the movie, and there's no real progression of him becoming weaker throughout the movie. He just suddenly is, and it doesn't really make sense. But there's a lot of those things in this movie. They're just, some things is one thing at one point in time in the movie, and then the thing is in another thing later on in the movie, and these two things don't really resemble the same thing. It's a thing in the movie. And hell, it even brings me on to my next point, which is that this movie doesn't know if it wants to be kind of realistic or just batshit crazy action 80s movie. I mean, it goes to these two extremes so often. It just, movies often just wants you to suspend your disbelief. It just wants you to accept the world it presents you as a real world. You just accept the rules that this movie presents, and that is it. But when the movie presents that these are people who are maybe a bit stronger and a bit tougher and doable than the normal human beings like any other action movie, then you accept that. And you accept that they can easily be killed and they cannot lift cars and anything like that. But then you see The Rock jumping out of the skyscraper to land on a person on a line, to beat the shit out of him, to jump from that guy to another person on a line further down in free fall, to beat the shit out of that person. And just he keeps going, and then he ends up falling, 30-40 meters through glass windows, and then lands on concrete without a scratch. And you even see him at one time. There's this helicopter. It's in the end of the movie. I mean, it has been spoiled in the trailer, so if you have seen the trailers, then you won't be spoiling. If you haven't seen the trailers, then just stick with me. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but just stick with me here. This helicopter lifts off 3.5 cars. They are joined through chain to each other. So this helicopter manages to lift off the 3 first cars, and then this final one, the 4th one, there's not enough force for the helicopter to lift the final one off. And since they think they cannot take off. So this helicopter clearly has extreme amounts of lifting force. Now, at one point, the car with Hobbs and Shaw on, which is the first car, is at it by itself, and then this chain gets unraveled from the cylinder thing where the chain, is wrapped around so they can, make it longer and make it shorter. I don't know what it's called, but it gets snapped off, and then Hobbs grabs the chain and he heads on to the car, and then for some reason the chopper is not strong enough to pull his arm off and at least destroy his grip, so he's going to fly off with the helicopter, or he's going to stand on the truck, and then the helicopter is going to fly off. The helicopter's not strong enough suddenly, and then just to cap it all off, he manages to pull the chain further down and then re-wrap it around this cylinder. And it's just, at that moment in the cinema, I just looked at my girlfriend and I, we just looked at each other, and we just sat there with our mouth open, just baffled. What the fuck just happened? I mean, there are some certain action scenes in here where they kind of push the limit of what is humanly possible, and you just kind of accept it because it's about Idris Elba's character. Then yeah, he's kind of Black Superman, but yeah, I just lost it. I didn't care from the movie after that point. I was just done with it. And there's a lot more of these kind of action sequences and just scenarios throughout the movie. I mean, Hobbs, he's just so fucking strong. It's not even funny to see him fight anyone because you never think that he's in any danger. He can literally just pick one guy up and then throw him several meters into another guy. Then they will fly additional 1 or 2 meters further backward. It's not fun to watch when the movie presents itself as a more realistic movie until you get to the more crazy action sequences. Do you feel me? Or let me put it this way. If the movie just presented itself as this extremely outlandish action movie with no real life element to it, then you would just accept that they are this freaking strong and there's nothing realistic about this movie. But unfortunately it doesn't, so we get this conflicting message. So yeah, I've rambled too much about this, so I'm just gonna get on to the next point. Which is the acting in this movie is not good. It's not bad, but it's not good either. It's barely passable. And the movie sometimes tries to get the message family. It's brought up at some point because, it's that thing. Every time it does it, it's just so preachy and you just become nauseous about how badly and forceful it's just throws itself upon you. It just feels like it's thrown in there at last minute because it's just needed it to be there so you will feel anything for these characters. You will be empathetic towards them, but you're not. You don't give two flying fucks about anyone in this movie. Even Hobbs' daughter, you don't fucking care. And then it's just the writing throughout this movie. The writing throughout this movie, for the most part, is just not only bad, but just lazy. It's like it didn't even want to make this movie. It didn't want to give an effort. I'm pretty sure the only two having a blast with this movie is Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham, because now they get to, bigger at each other again, and that's pretty much it. Nothing else in this movie just feels like that's anyone put in an effort at all. And I'm sure that a lot of people put an effort into this movie, but you don't feel that. And then there's the pacing. The pacing is just all over the place because so often it needs to just pull on the brakes just to have time for these bickering scenes between Hobbs and Shaw or some comedic scenes. So it brings the movie to an extreme halt a lot of the times. And not only that, then you have some exposition done that's just handled extremely poorly, and then other times it just picks up the pace to an absurd speed, which then again makes you, not suspend your disbelief, but actually unsuspend your disbelief. Well, what is that called? You don't believe in the movie anymore. For example, the final climactic battle takes place through the duration of 30 in-movie minutes. So, it's not going to be 30 minutes, but in-movie 30 minutes. And it is in the middle of the night. And through these 30 minutes, it's going to be broad daylight at high noon, where the sun is at its highest, and then late afternoon, where the sky is completely clouded and it's raining. Again, this is consistency. Nothing is consistent in this movie. It's all over the place. I could keep going, but just for the most part, I think this movie would have benefited a lot if it wasn't for this thing over here, because this thing completely ruins the movie. I'm gonna get to that in 2 seconds, but if this movie was a standalone movie and you just had these two characters who didn't like each other and you just got a bit of history of why they didn't like each other, then this movie would be fine. It would be fine, but unfortunately it isn't. So let's just bring the facts back that this movie is part of the Fast and Furious franchise and why this completely ruins the movie. So why does this completely ruin the movie? Well, again, consistency. As I said before, when I made my review for the Fast 8 movie back in 2017, Daidarius Shaw not only killed, but also tried to murder the rest of the main cast because what they did to his little brother back in Fast and Furious 6. The premise of the 7th movie was that he wanted revenge. That is the whole premise of the whole movie. He murdered one of their friends, which was Han. He tried to murder the rest of them. His little brother was the reason that Gal Gadot's character, who I can't remember what her name was, got killed. They hate each other. And then suddenly, in this movie, just kind of forget that because we need a wholehearted story where these two guys who hate each other become best friends. That is very, very important. Whereas in real life, that would never happen. You would never befriend someone who not only tried to kill, but more importantly, killed one of your friends. I mean, okay, it's not Hobbs' friend that they killed. Nonetheless, Hobbs is still brought back into the fight against Deckard because, he tried to kill him. But not only that, as I stated before in my Fast 8 review, for some reason Hobbs has gone from this very realistic cop or CIA man, I can't remember what his position is, but he has gone from this probably realistic guy in Fast 5, which is still my favorite Fast and Furious movies because it's the most realistic if you take out the part where, you drive around with the big ass safe. But for the most part, it's the most realistic, whereas here, he apparently just go around and save the world single-handedly. I don't know why, but that's what he does. That is one of the biggest problems for this movie, is the fact that they just completely ignore the relationship with Shaw and Hobbs and just the rest of the gang from the earlier movies. Now, another thing is how ridiculously unrealistic this movie is. And you might wonder, well, wasn't the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th movie completely ridiculous? Yes, but even though that the action scenes became more and more unrealistic, it still had its foot grounded in a realistic place, whereas this one introduces a mechanical engineered man who is now wearing a bulletproof suit, has an internal computer who can analyze fight patterns of other people, then come up with a counter attack in the split second, is now embedded in the same universe as the one where they did street racing and did a bank heist and did Tokyo Drift and all that shit. That is my problem with it. Yes, the action sequences became more and more absurd, and Hobbs' character went from realistic to just Hulk, when he just lifts people up and then throw them several meters, or the fact that you can use tasers or you can shoot him with rubber balls and he doesn't even face him because he's just that muscular and that big. It went from that to this, then you just introduce the sci-fi aspect of it, and then you completely loses me because you're just ignoring everything before, because now you just need something so extremely unrealistic just to be able to stand up to this new Hobbs, who is basically Hulk. And I know that in the MCU that is kind of what happened. I mean, the first phase was kind of realistic, and then you get to the second phase where it became more unrealistic, then the third phase it just went bananas. But at no point was Iron Man more inhuman in the later movies than he was in the first movie because of his suit. At no point was Captain America certainly extremely stronger than he were in phase 1 and so on. That consistency has stayed out throughout this movie, and then they didn't introduce some absurd technology that didn't make sense because Tony Stark's technology even in the first movie was, kind of sci-fi. So we kind of bought the advancement of the technology throughout the MCU movies, whereas in here, no, they have always kind of used some realistic technologies and some realistic aspects or ideas or ideologies. I mean, yeah, the God's Eye or whatever they're called that they used in the 7th movie to find Deckard Shaw was kind of outlandish. But still, there was no cybernetic engineered super black human thingy with an embedded AI or something like that. There was nothing like that. So that's pretty much what pisses me off about most in this movie, is the fact that it's connected to the Fast and Furious franchise, because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like you had a normal franchise and then suddenly just introduces Superman or Thor or Hulk or anything that would had no business being in this franchise because it was based on reality. Now I have vented a lot about this movie and why I didn't like it. So let's just leave it there. I mean, I could go on and on how bad this movie is. I mean, the pacing and story aspects and all of that is all it does is it just explains why this movie is a bad movie. So what you're gonna get from this movie is you're gonna get some decent chemistry between the two main characters. You're gonna get a simple story that is easy to follow and some few nice effects, I guess. But otherwise, it's a crappy story. It's crappy told. The production value is laughable bad. The action sequences is for the most time not entertaining. They're just clunky and weird. There's too much fucking shaky cam on the fight scenes. I don't know why they insist on using shaky cams, but you can't fucking see shit in most of the fight scenes, which I don't understand. You have two of the best action stars in this movie, and you're not gonna utilize the fact that they're great at making fight scenes. And then there's the continuity problem where this movie doesn't feel like it fits into the Fast and Furious franchise. I mean, maybe when they get to the Fast and Furious 9, you're just gonna give up because apparently they're going to go to space and then maybe it will fit into the franchise then. I don't know. But a lot of the continuity is completely thrown out the window with this movie, which is why it doesn't really respect anything that came before it. So why even make it if you don't want to enrich the existing story and world? I don't know. Anyway, Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, it is a completely waste of time. So yeah, you will be entertained throughout this movie a couple of times because it is funny when it wants to be. But unfortunately, when it's not funny, it's just nothing. And I don't know why they made it. Maybe they want to make more money. But besides that, there's no reason for this movie to exist. Not good. Don't go watch it. Please don't go watch it. Let's just make this franchise die. Because to me, it just died after the 5th one. So it's been a long time since I ran about a movie. I mean, a lot about a movie. My reviews are usually quite short. They're usually around the 9 to 13 minute mark. I don't know how long this review is going to be, but I'm guessing it's going to be a bit longer. I don't know. If it is, I'm sorry. I just needed to get this off my chest because this is not a good movie. I also wanted to actually review Aladdin and The Lion King because I actually went and saw them this vacation, summer vacation, but it's been so long since they came out, so I don't know if it will make sense. I mean, The Lion King is still in cinemas, but I don't know. I might do it before we get to the end of the year. I might review them. Maybe I'll review them next week. Who knows? They're not going to be pleasant reviews either. I mean, at least not Aladdin. Anyway, Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? What did you like about the movie? And do you agree or disagree with what I said? I'm not gonna tell you or ask you what your favorite Fast and Furious movies is because I'm pretty sure I asked you that in the former review. I'm not quite sure. It's been 2 years. Whatever you think, comment on me your thoughts. And as always, until I see you next video, remember to stay awesome. Bye. Can we just get some good Fast and Furious movies if they need to continue to make 2 others? Just please, please.